to a human I can depend on to bring me happy. Thank you, happy.
Again, Trekkies, we're back again with another jam-packed episode of A Captain's Log, your place to beam up for everything related to 57 years and counting of the Star Trek universe. My name is Brian Kreutz, and I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Lily Fox Lowe.
Oh, well, thank you, Brian, and thanks also to our friends around the world and beyond. You know, we started this show 2 years ago with very modest resources, but a deep love and reverence for Star Trek. And because of you, we're now being syndicated on TV stations coast to coast here in America, in addition to having a worldwide audience online.
Absolutely.
We begin a 2-episode season finale in which we'll beam up 7, that's right, 7 Star Trek stunt superstars.
Pretty impressive. You're correct, Lily. Now, Trekkies, you probably remember the History Channel's 2021 documentary series called The Center Seat, 55 years of Star Trek. Well, it's now available on a 4-disc DVD set that's a whopping 12 hours long.
Woo!
Pretty cool, huh? Now, this includes 11 episodes of the series, plus more than 3 hours of bonus materials. In addition, a companion book of the same title written by Peter Holmstrom is also now available.
Well, we have a few other news items to get to, but we'll save those for part 2 of this season finale next week. We're going to take a little more time than usual for our interview over these last 2 episodes because, as I said, we have 7 guests.
Yes, this is going to be impressive. First time ever on A Captain's Log. Very often, some of the most important people in a production don't get their due recognition. Now, the Star Trek films and TV series have, of course, been blessed with so many great actors over the years, but the breathtaking action scenes would be far less effective without a lot of very highly skilled stunt people. So, over this 2-part season finale here on A Captain's Log, we have 7 stunt superstars who've worked on thousands of hours of Star Trek films and TV series productions over the last 40-plus years.
Joining us today are the stunt performers and coordinators who have helped bring Star Trek's action fight sequences alive, plus double trouble stunts to make the main cast look good.
And let's bring on, oh wait, we have a surprise guest, an 8th stunt actor and stunt performer.
The Stunts of Star Trek Spectacular on A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Computer. Access library computer access retrieval system from Earth. Search top stunt performers in the late 20th century at Paramount around the 1990s.
Library computer access retrieval system entries for stunt coordinator and stunt performers in Hollywood, Los Angeles, California, circa late 20th century. Dennis Madalone, Tom Morga, Mark Riccardi, Chris Doyle, George Colucci, Leslie Hoffman, Chester Tripp III, Irving Lewis.
How you doing, everybody? Man, it's great to be here. I tell you, with all the rest of these stunt guys, that Dennis Danger Madalone got together, this is awesome.
Almost all of you talented stunt performers are familiar with each other and working together, starting with South Plainfield High School in New Jersey. And then you had your start with the Paul Stader Stunt School in Santa Monica, California, with Irving and George being the recipient of your training from Paul's techniques. Let's start with Mark Riccardi. Mark, what are your earliest memories of getting your start with Dennis and then on to Paramount for Star Trek?
I didn't do any of the Paul Stader. I got there, and I believe it was after the Stader days. I showed up at Dennis's, or actually he picked me up at a place where I was just happening to be hanging out, and took me to, I remember he took me to 31 Flavors and pulled about $1,000 out of his pocket and said, "Hey kid, what do you want?" And then told me to grab my stuff, and we went over to his place and kind of hung out there for a while until he actually hired me and put me on The Greatest American Hero.
Mark.
Yeah.
You did, because if you were with me and Tom and all of us,
no,
then you weren't with us, but you got what Paul taught us. We gave.
Well, if you want to look at it that way, that's for sure. We got.
Hey, definitely. It's called a football pass. He passed it to us. We passed it to you.
Yeah, it's kind of like the 70-yard. It's kind of like the 70-yard bomb I threw you, right?
Yeah, that 10-yard little pass that I ran 80 for a touchdown. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and it's kind of like the fish. It just keeps getting bigger, bigger.
Thank you, Mark. Leslie, let's move on to you at Paul Stader Stunt School. I understand Dennis had a softball team called the Danger Dogs, and all of you together were really family at work and really good friends living your dream together. Can you tell us your perspective?
You're talking about something that's probably 20 years apart. Paul Stader's gym was in the 70s. And there was Dennis and Tom and Chris and myself. It wasn't until Star Trek that actually the stunt community wanted to play softball, and Dennis came in with the Danger Dog team, which was mostly people from Star Trek. But we've always been a family. From the 70s till now, it's always been a family.
So the high school where I grew up in New Jersey, I had them there. And then I had my high school where I trained with Paul Stader, had Tom Morga, Chris Doyle, Kenny Lesko. It was just like Leslie Hoffman. Hey, Leslie. Hey. We had the whole team. I had kids with me that were like the kids that I am. And it was so easy to accomplish that with people that you knew so long and grew up with. So at the end of that day, with the battles and Irving getting killed 4 or 5 times all over the place, covering all the dialogue, that's the reward that all us stunt people get, is someone looking at you at the end of the day with happiness in their eyes that we accomplished something really cool, something that was on their mind. We made it visualized for them, and they embraced it. So that's our reward. You know, the money comes and goes, right? It's gone.
Right.
It's gone because the wife's going to spend it, right, Irving?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I first came out from California, Dennis Madalone invited me out, my wife and I, to come out to California to see if I wanted to be a stuntman. And I was like kind of hesitant, didn't want to do it, but he talked me into it. But he's a good man. So I came out, my wife and I, we spent a week out here in California. My wife went back home and she says, if you want to be a stuntman, stay out here and see if you want to make it. And I said, okay. So I stayed out. I did some extra work first. That's what Dennis said. See if you want to get into it, do some extra work. And then from there, if you still want to be a stuntman, then, something will happen. I said, okay. So the first show that I really got to be on with Dennis Madalone was 10 Speed and Brown Shoes. What was his name, Dennis?
Ben Vereen.
Ben Vereen. Yes, sir. Ben Vereen. And he was just as friendly as can be on 10 Speed and Brown Shoes. From that show, things just opened up. Dennis did a whole lot for me from that show.
Was it 10 Speed and Brown Shoe or 10 Speed and Brown Shoe? I don't think it was Brown Shoes.
It was Brown Shoe. I know. Sounds weird, but it was called Brown Shoe.
That's correct.
Tom Morga had a jacket from 10 Speed and Brown Shoes. I wish I could have saw that jacket. I want to see it.
I think I remember that one. Yeah, you remember that one?
The thing for sure is the shoes were brown.
They were.
That's right.
Both of them.
Oh, look at this. Tom is wearing a cool jacket from his Brown Shoelaces production. This is the one that you're all talking about. Look at the detail there in the stitching.
I'm still wearing it.
Oh, that's the jacket.
That's
Okay,
the
I
jacket.
remember that. Oh, okay.
It was a Spielberg movie, and and Goldblum was there. He was done, or I was done with Goldblum. So I walked in with this and went, you got that jacket? I kept it.
Let's open with the Season 1 Deep Space Nine episode, Battle Lines. Now, this episode had Chris Doyle and George Colucci as Ennis warriors. Tom Morga was on the opposite end of the spectrum as a Null Ennis warrior. And he's impaling Patricia Tallman's character, Nima, with one of his custom weapons. Now, Tom, you created props such as this blade weapon that you're going to show us here in just a moment. But Dennis, you have a great scene we're going to show as a clip where you're an Ennis warrior, and I believe you still have the prop weapon from this glorious battle scene. This is the one that was filmed on Paramount Stage 18. Now, I understand the director Paul Lynch let you shoot the whole day of stunts with dialogue, which is unusual for taking command as a stunt coordinator like yourself. Can you speak to this?
First of all, it was so great to, do an episode where everyone just battles and battles. Before we started the battle scene, there's lots of dialogue in different parts of the battle, and the director looked at me and said, it's your day. I said, all right, well, no, he meant it's your day. He wanted me to direct the actors, the stunt people, the dialogue, and the whole deal. And I'm usually, by the side of a director leading the way. So for a director to tell me to take the set, that was okay. And so now we're going to get crazier and really do some crazy fights with my friends. And so through the whole day, I'm doing battles with the guys, and then I punch in for the close-ups. And every time we yell cut, I look at the director, and he's reading a newspaper, and he just pulls the paper down and goes, okay. And that's what he did all day. He just peekaboo, you're doing great. And so the next day was the other big battle day, and he did the same thing. He said, it's your day. And there's dialogue with Avery Brooks and everybody, but I was ready for it. Somewhere toward the end of that day, Bobby D, our UPM producer, came up to me, not the AD and not the director, and goes, Dennis, what time do you think we're going to wrap tonight? So he already knew I was kind of running the whole scoop.
Well, it was a lot of fun working with the bat lift. It was a different type of weapon that we're used to. We're used to swords and knives and staffs and ox handles and stuff like that. But this thing was an interesting piece of equipment or weapon, and it was interesting how to maneuver and make it look kind of cool, waving it around. So it took a lot of hand movement and stuff like that. And Tom led the way with helping us get that whole thing working properly. So it was a lot of fun. But again, playing a Klingon in those 10mm wetsuits that they made costumes out of was quite a feat at the end of the day. When you took 10, 15 hours into that, I'm telling you, it'd kill a regular person. It was just brutal.
Chris, by the way, that weren't batless because we were doing the show Battle Lines, and they had a special weapon called a pole arm. And there's a good story that goes with that, because I went to a meeting with Dennis for the production meeting, and that day they had a morning meeting, and they were going to have them read through in the afternoon. And while we're sitting there at the production meeting, they're talking about, okay, we'll do this fight, and we'll have pole arms for the stunt guys, and yada yada. And I'm looking at Dennis, I'm thinking they're going to make another prop for us. It's going to be awkward, not a balance. I said, why don't we make something of our own? I'll tell you what. Why don't I go home and put something together for the meeting this afternoon? Dennis says, yeah, go ahead. So I went home and I got a axe handle and a couple pieces of cardboard. I put, and matter of fact, I still have that thing. This is what I put together when I was doing. I got a piece of cardboard, cut this cutting part of it, and then I wrapped a big ball of old sock at the base, and this is the kind of weapon that we created and gave to props. And they said, and when we went to the meeting in the afternoon, Dennis says, listen, let me ask you a question about that weapon we're talking about, that pole arm. Could we do something like this? And they all went, oh, all right, we'll give that to props. So we got our weapon made the way it would work for us easiest. So that was one of those situations where we were able to get something that we can wield. And the idea of of a pole arm like this is that you can use it you can do a butt strike, you do a cut, you could jab, and it really made a nice weapon to work with. So they made this, which is their first generation of it, which is still big and heavy, and it's just like a real thing. We told them, well, listen, can you make it a little lighter like we showed you? And they says, oh, okay. So they went back and remade it. So this is like the first generation of the heavy thing that we didn't use. So I had shown you this because I remember, I think we took this. The reason I have it is because we didn't use it. So we had a good time on battle lines, and we all were there. I mean, there was George Colucci there. Chris, you were there with a pole arm. and I think we had Jeff Pruitt, and he was from Buffy. I think he was the coordinator on Buffy Vampire Slayer. He was there. And we had Alan Alney doubling for Avery Brooks. And anyway, it was a great fight. I was fighting Pat a couple times. Of course, I killed her. I gave her a butt strike, stabbed her, I impaled her. I got to kill her several times. She had a good time. But anyway, that was pole arms. That was one of our favorites. We had a really good time. It was earlier in the seasons of the episodes. So when we were able to make that pole arm and do the whole thing, it came together pretty well.
Speaking of Klingon weapons, let's shift the discussion to Blood Oath, that second season Deep Space Nine episode directed by Vinrik Kolbe. Now, we interviewed Tom Morga earlier this season, and we've shown some bits of his rehearsal at Woodley Park in Van Nuys, California. Now, this is with Cece, Karen Colbert, choreographing and practicing a one-on-one batleth fight progressing into the scene. Now, Dennis, I know you choreographed stunts on this huge classic Klingon character episode with Kang, Kor, and Koloth, some of our favorites. Now, what are your memories from this historic Millard house designed by Frank Lloyd Wright in Pasadena for the albino encounter, which also included Chuck Borden as a stunt double for the albino's assistant?
Yeah, pretty much everybody was there. That was a great day because we really put together, this cool battle, trained the actors. And the morning of, I got together with the director, Rick Kolbe, and I showed him what we had. And it was a big day. It was going to be hard to get to stay because there was, 9 actors, 12 stunt people, a big room, but just smoke set. It was a hot stage, and it was just so much to do, so much dialogue and so much fighting. He had that look like, man, this is going to be and I said, Rick, let me show you everything. And I showed him the whole thing, and he said, let's go. And I, because of all you guys, because of all the stunt people and stunt women, we were able to be ahead of the game. So we didn't have to really rehearse anything. We already knew when they put the camera this way, we knew what we owed over this way with the actors, with the doubles, where the dialogue goes. And so we just had this enormous battle. Irving flying in the air. I remember Kenny Lesko. I fought Kenny myself and, chopped him up to bits and knocked him to the ground. And I could tell, even though they all were wearing helmets, those particular aliens, I could tell who was who just by the way they flew in the air, how Chris flew, how Kenny flew, how Irving flew. And I just, I just knew by the body. So when I see the footage, I just go, oh, there goes Irving, there goes Chester, there's Leslie. So it's great to know, even though they're wearing all this stuff, I know who's who because of their body talent. And I remember at the end of the day, when we were done with this enormous day, and it was hot, Chuck Borden was sweating. He lost about 10 pounds. We all lost so much weight wearing all that gear. And I remember Rick Kolbe looking at me when they yelled rap, and he couldn't believe we got the day. It was such an amazing day. I don't know if any of the guys knew, stunt guys, but Rick Kolbe hugged me, and he had tears in his eyes.
In the Next Generation episode, The Next Phase, Irving Lewis was a stunt double for LeVar Burton as Geordie LaForge. Irving saved Ro Laren from the Romulan officer, and Tom Morga was stunt doubling for Brian Cousins in this scene between Irving and Tom.
Yeah, most of the times when we were on the set, 9 out of 10, if you mess up, Dennis gives you that look like, and I'm going, oh boy. But I give him the old puppy eyes. Come on, Dan. Can I do it again? And, he just kind of looks at me and shakes his head and either walks off or smiles or something, and it's okay after that, So Dennis wasn't a hard taskmaster. He had fun. And if, like I said, if you messed up a little bit, just give him the old puppy eyes and it'll be okay.
Oh, yeah. And that's the fight I was doing with, it was supposed to be Ensign Rowe, and it was doubled by Pat Tallman, one of our, stunt ladies that was there all with us a lot too, and she had a great career, and she's really an actress as well. So she's done. But anyway, Pat and I were doing that fight, and then Geordie's supposed to see, he could see us and nobody else could because we were in a different phase, whatever that meant. And so he come in, charged, and knocked me away from her, and I went right through the bulkhead and just sort of disappeared because I was like one of these Gossamer characters as well, and so I could go through walls or something. But whatever, it went well. And I remember Pat gave me an elbow in one of the shots, and I was wearing this Romulan suit, and it's got waffle marks, bumps all over it. And she nailed me with her elbow, and afterwards she says, "Look at this," and she had a little tattoo, about 6 little squares on her elbow.
Irving, you were the stunt double for Tim Russ, and Mark, you were the stunt double for Jonathan Frakes in the Bury Sweep episode in The Next Generation called Starship Mine. Now, aside from the choreography, if you were not on the call sheet for a particular day of shooting as a double or for stunt work, would you be around the production so that you can get a beat on whatever the principal actors are doing, so you can learn their movements and mannerisms for what you're going to incorporate into the stunt performance?
Well, you know what? If I was already there working, I think I already had a bead on Jonathan, his moves, the way he walked, the way he turned the corner. He once told me that, he wouldn't even step off an apple box, that he wanted me to do everything because it was a point, I don't know, after episode 3, 4, or 5, he had a bad back. So I was called in to do not just the stunts, but even some photo doubling in some instances. But I'd already had a bead on him. So when I had a day off, I wasn't on the call sheet, I was probably at the racetrack. I was at Santa Anita.
Same thing with me with Tim Russ. He was a great actor, great person to be with and talk with and so forth. And he let me do his stunt work as well, to go up there and do it just for him, and he'll look at me in amazement, But like I said, it's all because of Den teaching along the way, those many years. You just put yourself in the actor's spot.
Oh, really? I wouldn't do that again.
So we have 3 clips that involve some good stunts from the 3rd season Next Generation episode, The Most Toys. Chris Doyle, you doubled Data in 2 cool clips that we have, running into a force field and becoming a stiff mannequin-like Data who goes headfirst into a couch. George Colucci and Dennis Madalone both went flying across the camera a few times too. So let's start with Chris and then we'll get to Dennis.
Being I would say personally, an expert at mimicking people, because I've done that a lot leading up to that whole thing. So I had probably 20 years of experience of mimicking actors and different characters before. So that gave me a lot of a head start on that stuff. So it's, yes, like Dennis said, we're doing stunts, but we're also performing. We're actors. So I'm acting as if I am this robot. Well, if I'm turned off, I don't move. So that's what I did. And so when they said action, I fell forward and I didn't move. It sounds simple, and it is simple, but to a lot of people, it's actually not simple, because sometimes the simplest things are the hardest things to do.
Me being a stuntman, I don't want to be locked up like that and fall straight and eat the ground. I made sure that there was furniture there, and I brought Chris over and I said, "Hey, Chris, we're going to let's rehearse this," and bounce off the couch. And we did like a bounce. So when you see the clip, it's just so cool because Chris literally sold 100%, didn't move. You can't see an inch, bounced off the couch and stayed stiff and rolled off the couch to the floor. And I remember my producers the next day, they just said, "Holy moly, was that a dummy?" And I said, "It was a dummy, but we had to pay him."
A lot.
Yeah. And he made some money on that. And then before that, he did a running ratchet that Chris did doubling Data, and he ran in and jumped in the air, and it's a ratchet that hits the end of, where Chris's foot plants, and then it jerks him backwards. And that was just fantastic. And
Leslie, you did stunts with those two super stunt guys, Dennis and Tom, so many times. Also, I want to get to George and Irving on the Deep Space Nine episode, Times Orphan. Now, I want to go to Quarks Bar specifically, when the older Molly, played by actress Michelle Khrushchekran, had her stunt double, Simone Bassare, run into the group of many of you. Now, maybe some of you can share a little bit more about this time. And this is a question open to all of you. Please chime in.
It was Molly 18 runs down the spiral staircase from the holosuite, and she knocks Dennis and Linda out of the way on the staircase. Then it was Simone. Then she jumps off the staircase and she runs into me, knocks me over. Then I don't remember who she hits next. George was there. I forget who else. And finally, Tom comes in as an ambassador. I forget the alien's name. And Simone, or Molly 18, picks up a broken bottle and stabs Tom in the stomach. But later, we did a group picture behind Quarks Bar, and there's all of us there, just hanging out, having a good time.
I don't remember specifically doing anything, if I just got knocked down as well, or so I don't know exactly what I did on that one.
I'm not sure, Georgie, but I think you got thrown over the bar.
Times Orphan, as far as that there's just a sequence shot, and the idea of a shot like that is to have it all coordinated correctly. Everybody has to step into their spot at the right moment. So Dennis had each person be in one place or another, turn around into their mark, or step into the mark, or step away and get hit out of it. So that's all that was a coordination of just action. And to make it look good, you just had to hit your marks and then take a fall.
Awesome. I remember we had some big scenes there, and then we'd have some long breaks, and I know I was sore from getting thrown around, and then we'd have these long breaks, and we'd lay down for like 4 or 5 hours looking for a crash pad to lay down on, and you'd become so stiff and so tired, and they'd say, okay, let's go, action, and we'd have to get back up and get into it. And I was like, try to stretch real quick, do some jumping jacks, and then we'd have to get back there and beat up again after laying down for like 5 or 6 hours somewhere, or hiding, and it's like, so it's so hard to get back. It's so hard to get back into it, but you just have to, and then you're getting thrown into a wall, and you're whatever. Then
you go back to sleep again.
Go back to sleep. Yeah, go back to sleep again. Yeah, for sure.
Behind the wall.
Yeah.
Where no one sees you. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my tricks is, whenever I'm doing big battles with you guys, I never sit down. Some days I just, because once you sit down and take a time out, but it's like a sunken ship, right?
The stunts of Star Trek Spectacular on the Captain's Log returns in a moment.
This Stunt Spectacular episode is quite the trip down Paramount streets and the beats it takes to make action sequences come alive. We will return next week with part 2 of our interview with Madalone, Morga, Riccardi, Lewis, Colucci, Hoffman, and Tripp.
Can't wait for that. Bye for now.
Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy.